It was always the stairs. Every time the sisters climbed them, the dread began, heavy and cold, like a weight pressing down on their chests. At first, they thought it was their imagination, but soon the sight of him waiting, always waiting at the top, turned their childhood home into a place of nightmares. The house stood in a quiet suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. It wasn't much different from the others on the street: white siding, a picket fence, and a large oak tree out front that groaned when the wind caught it just right. The Johnson family had moved there in the summer of 2004, hoping for a fresh start after years of living in cramped apartments. Richard Johnson was a mechanic, his wife Linda a nurse at the local hospital. Their daughters, Emily and Claire, were only a year apart, 12 and 13, inseparable in the way sisters sometimes are when they share more than just a room. They shared secrets, fears, and the strange visions that would come to define their years in that house. The first time it happened, Emily was the one who saw him. She was going upstairs one night to grab her algebra book, grumbling about homework when her gaze lifted to the landing. He was standing there, a man, short, hunched, his greasy hair falling into his face, his clothes ripped and smeared with dirt. In his hand, a saw. The blade glistened with something dark, wet, and unmistakably red. Emily froze. His eyes, small, sunken, and brimming with something more than malice, locked onto hers. The longer she stared, the taller he seemed to grow, his feet stretching down into the carpet like roots digging into soil. She gasped, dropped her pencil, and bolted back down the stairs. When she told Claire, her sister laughed it off until the next night. Claire had gone up to grab a sweatshirt when she saw him too. Same place, same saw, same grim look. From that moment on, the sisters refused to go upstairs alone. Every trip to their room became a two-person mission, and even then, their hearts pounded, their hands gripped tightly together as they climbed. Their parents didn't believe them. Richard scoffed, muttering about too many scary movies. Linda suggested maybe it was a shadow, a trick of the light. But Emily and Claire knew better. They felt it, the chill in the air whenever they passed the stairs, the sense of eyes following them, the faint metallic tang that lingered in their nostrils like dried blood. Weeks turned to months. The man with the saw didn't disappear. He didn't move either. He simply stood there waiting at the top of the stairs. But sometimes, he changed. Once, Emily swore she saw him step forward, the saw dragging along the banister with a screech that made her teeth ache. Another time, Claire claimed his mouth moved as if whispering words she couldn't quite hear, though she felt the vibration in her bones. Worst of all was the night they both swore his feet stretched impossibly long, roots of pale flesh sliding down the steps toward them. That was when the nightmares began. Emily dreamed of being locked in a dark room, the sound of sawing echoing around her until sparks flew and the walls themselves seemed to scream. Claire dreamed of running through endless hallways, always chased by the sound of dragging feet. They woke up sweaty, screaming, their cries echoing through the house until their parents rushed in, exasperated. Linda tried bringing in a priest, though she told the girls it was just to bless the new home. He sprinkled holy water, murmured prayers, but afterward, when the sisters crept upstairs, the man was still there, saw in hand, his grim face untouched by faith or holy words. By the second year, Emily began to keep a journal of every sighting. She wrote down the time, the day, the exact details. Sometimes she noted small differences, the saw dripping more one day than another, his hair matted with something thick and clotted, his feet stretching a few inches farther than usual, but no matter what, he never disappeared. Claire, always braver, decided one evening to test him. She stood halfway up the stairs, Emily clutching her arm, and whispered, "What do you want from us?" For the first time he moved. His head twitched, slowly, unnaturally, as though his neck was broken. His lips parted. A rasp came out, like metal grinding on bone. Claire screamed, dragging Emily back down, and they both collapsed on the floor, shaking. That night, Linda found her daughters curled up together on the couch downstairs, too afraid to sleep in their own room. "It's just your imagination," she whispered, stroking their hair, but her voice trembled, because lately she too had started to hear it at night, the faint scrape of metal on wood coming from the upstairs hall. Richard was stubborn. He refused to move, refused to admit there was anything wrong. "We're not running from shadows," he growled whenever the subject came up. But deep down, even he had started to notice things. The sound of creaking footsteps when no one was home. The faint smell of iron that sometimes drifted through the vents. The way the dog refused to go near the stairs. The breaking point came one winter night. Emily woke to find Claire standing at the foot of her bed, eyes wide, face pale. "He came in," Claire whispered. Emily's blood froze. "What do you mean he came in?" Claire's voice cracked. "He's not just in the hall anymore. I saw him in our room, by the dresser. He was closer this time, so close I could see the cracks in his teeth." They didn't sleep that night. By spring, the sisters begged their parents to move. Linda was willing. Richard wasn't. But then came the night that changed everything. It was after midnight when Linda woke to the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming from the hall outside their bedroom. She nudged Richard awake. He grumbled, sat up, and listened. The footsteps grew louder. Then came the sound. A saw dragging across the floor. Richard leapt out of bed, yanking the door open. The hallway was dark, the air colder than ice, and there he was. The man, short, hunched, hair hanging wild, his saw dripping crimson onto the carpet. His eyes locked on Richard's, and for the first time, Richard understood. This wasn't his daughter's imagination. This was real. The man's feet began to stretch, sliding forward with impossible speed. Richard slammed the door, heart pounding, and pushed a dresser against it. The sound of sawing started, loud, frantic, as though the blade was cutting straight through wood. The family didn't sleep a second after that. At dawn, Linda called a realtor. Within a month, the Johnsons packed up and left the house behind, abandoning most of their furniture. They never spoke much about what happened. The sisters grew older, moved away, started families of their own, but sometimes when they got together, they whispered about the man at the top of the stairs, the saw in his hand, the grim look on his face. And once, years later, Claire drove past their old neighborhood, curiosity tugging at her. The house was still there, fresh paint, new shutters, a swing set in the yard. Another family lived inside now. Children played on the lawn, their laughter echoing through the summer air. Claire almost convinced herself it had all been in her head, until she saw it. At the upstairs window, a flash of movement, a shadow, short, hunched, a saw glinting in the sunlight. And then the curtains closed.